They thought she was just a ghost from the past, a discarded woman with empty pockets and a broken heart. When billionaire Gregory Sterling walked into that courtroom, holding hands with his glamorous young mistress, he expected a quick signature and a clean break. He had the high-priced lawyers, he had the power. But he forgot one thing: the truth has a funny way of showing up when you least expect it. When the courtroom doors swung open and his ex-wife walked in, not alone, but holding the hands of two identical boys he vowed never to see again, the atmosphere shattered. But that wasn't the shock of the century. Wait until you hear the secret the judge revealed, a secret that made the mistress scream, the billionaire fall to his knees, and changed everything in a single heartbeat. You won't believe who actually owned the fortune they were fighting for. The rain in Seattle was relentless that Tuesday morning, a gray curtain that seemed to wash away the color of the city. For Hanna Sterling, the weather was fitting. She stood under the awning of a crumbling bus stop on 3rd Avenue, clutching a worn-out beige coat around her thin frame. Her boots, bought second-hand 3 winters ago, were letting water in at the toes. "Mommy, I'm cold," Toby whispered, tugging at her sleeve. He was the quieter of the two, always sensing her anxiety before she even spoke it. Hanna looked down at her 6-year-old sons, Toby and Tyler. They were identical in every way, the same unruly mop of dark curls, the same piercing blue eyes that mirrored the man she was about to face. She knelt, ignoring the damp pavement soaking into her jeans, and zipped Toby's jacket up to his chin. "I know, baby. The bus is coming soon," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Remember what we talked about. We have to be brave today. Like knights." "Like knights," Tyler repeated, puffing out his chest. "We are going to see the bad man." Hannah's heart squeezed. "We are going to see your father. And a judge. We just have to tell the truth. That's all knights do." She checked her watch, a cheap plastic thing she'd picked up at a drugstore. 8:15 a.m. The hearing was at 9:00 a.m. at the King County Superior Court. She couldn't be late. She couldn't give Gregory's lawyers any ammunition to paint her as irresponsible. Gregory. Just thinking his name made her stomach churn with a mix of fear and nausea. It had been 6 years since he threw her out of the sprawling Sterling estate in Bellevue. She had been 5 months pregnant, terrified and sobbing, begging him to listen. But Gregory Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Maritime, didn't listen to pleading wives. He listened to profit margins, shareholders, and apparently his new executive assistant, Vanessa. The bus finally hissed to a halt in front of them, splashing a wave of dirty water onto the curb. Hanna ushered the boys onto the warm bus, counting out exact change with trembling fingers. Meanwhile, across the city, the scene was vastly different. A sleek, black limousine idled outside the glass-walled entrance of the Four Seasons Hotel. The driver, a stoic man named Collins, held the rear door open. Gregory Sterling stepped out, adjusting the cuffs of his Italian silk suit. At 42, he was undeniably handsome in a sharp, predatory way. He had the kind of face that belonged on Forbes covers jawline like granite, eyes that assessed the value of everything they touched. "Gregory, wait for me," a voice trilled. Vanessa emerged from the hotel lobby, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. She was stunning, wrapped in a white cashmere coat that cost more than Hanna made in a year. Her blonde hair was coiffed to perfection, and a diamond the size of a grape weighed down her left ring finger. "Hurry up, Vanessa," Gregory snapped, checking his Rolex. "Judge Harrison is a stickler for time. I want this over with before lunch." "Don't be grumpy, darling," Vanessa purred, sliding into the leather interior of the limo. She pulled him in after her. "Today is a celebration. Once you sign those papers and that wretched woman is officially history, we can finally announce the merger. And the wedding." Gregory poured himself a scotch from the car's bar, despite the early hour. "It's not just the wedding, Vanessa. It's the trust. The board has been breathing down my neck. My grandfather's stipulations were archaic. A stable family man run the company. What a joke. Once the divorce is finalized, I can restructure the assets." "And she won't get a dime?" Vanessa asked, her eyes narrowing greedily. "You promised she wouldn't get a dime." "She signed a prenup, Vanessa. And she's been living in squalor for 6 years. She has no lawyer, no resources, and no fight left in her." "I made sure of that," Gregory said, taking a sip of the amber liquid. "She's bringing the twins, apparently. My lawyer said she filed a motion for child support." Vanessa laughed, a cruel tinkling sound. "Child support? For those brats? You haven't seen them since they were born. For all we know, they aren't even yours." "They're mine," Gregory muttered, looking out the tinted window as the rain streaked the glass. "They have the Sterling eyes. But that doesn't matter. I don't need heirs. I need freedom." As the limo glided through the traffic, cutting through the rain like a shark through water, neither of them knew that the archaic stipulations of Gregory's late grandfather were far more complex than a simple clause about being a family man. And they certainly didn't know that Judge Harrison had spent the previous night reading a very old, very specific addendum to the Sterling family. The King County Courthouse was a maze of marble and mahogany, imposing and cold. Hanna held Toby and Tyler's hands tightly as they navigated the security checkpoint. The metal detector beeped, startling Tyler, but the guard, seeing the exhausted look in Hanna's eyes, simply waved her through after a quick check. "It's okay," Hanna whispered. "Just a machine." They took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway outside courtroom 4B was crowded with lawyers in gray suits, whispering in hushed tones. The air smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. Hanna felt painfully out of place. Her coat was still damp, leaving a faint smell of wet wool. She tried to smooth down the boy's hair, but her hands were shaking. Well, look what the cat dragged in." The voice was like ice water down her spine. Hanna froze, then slowly turned. Vanessa stood there, looming over her. She had removed her white coat to reveal a tailored red dress that screamed power. She looked at Hanna not with pity, but with sheer disgust, as if Hanna were a stain on the floor. "Hello, Vanessa," Hanna said, her voice quiet but steady. "I'm surprised you could afford the bus fare," Vanessa sneered, crossing her arms. She glanced down at the twins. Toby shrank back behind Hannah's leg, but Tyler glared at the woman. "And you brought the baggage." Cute. Trying to play the sympathy card with the judge. "It won't work, honey. Gregory has the best legal team in the state." "I'm not here for sympathy," Hanna said, tightening her grip on her sons. "I'm here for justice. Gregory hasn't paid a cent in 6 years. We live in a studio apartment. My sons need clothes they need." "They need a father who actually wants them," Vanessa interrupted, leaning in close. Her perfume was overpowering. "Gregory doesn't want them. He doesn't want you. He's moving on to a life of luxury that you couldn't even dream of. We're going to be the power couple of Seattle. You're just a footnote." Just then, the heavy oak doors of the courtroom opened, and a bailiff stepped out. "Sterling versus Sterling. All parties, please enter." Gregory appeared from a side conference room, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like sharks in human skin. He walked past Hanna without even making eye contact. He didn't look at his sons. It was as if they were invisible. Hanna felt a tear prick her eye, but she blinked it away. "Not today," she told herself. "Don't you dare cry today." "Come on, boys," she said. They entered the courtroom. It was a large, intimidating space, with high ceilings and rows of empty benches. Hanna took her seat at the defendant's table. She was alone. No lawyer sat beside her. She had tried to get legal aid, but Gregory's lawyers had buried her in so much paperwork and motions that the free clinics had been overwhelmed and dropped her case. Gregory and Vanessa sat at the plaintiff's table on the right. They were laughing softly at something one of the lawyers said. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. A door behind the bench opened, and Judge Harrison walked in. Judge Martha Harrison was a legend in Seattle. 60 years old, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and spectacles perched on the end of her nose, she was known for 2 things: her absolute intolerance for nonsense and her encyclopedic knowledge of estate law. She wasn't just a family court judge. She had been specially assigned to this case because of the complexity of the Sterling assets. She sat down, arranged her robes, and looked over her glasses at the courtroom. Her gaze lingered on the 2 lawyers, then on Gregory, then on Vanessa. Finally, her eyes landed on Hanna and the 2 small boys sitting quietly behind her on the bench. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Harrison began, her voice crisp. "You are petitioning for a finalization of divorce and a complete severance of parental rights. Is that correct?" Gregory stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Yes, Your Honor. It has been 6 years of separation. It is time to move on. I am willing to offer a one-time settlement of $10,000 to Ms. Hanna, provided she waives all future claims. $10,000. The judge repeated, her face unreadable. For the mother of your 2 children. And for 6 years of back support. They are an unexpected complication, Gregory said smoothly. And frankly, Your Honor, my financial situation is tied up in the company. I am cash poor at the moment. Hanna gasped. Cash poor. The man arrived in a limousine. Liar. The small voice echoed through the silent courtroom. It was Tyler. He had stood up on the bench, his little fists clenched. Tyler, sit down, Hanna hissed, terrified. He's a liar. Tyler shouted, pointing a small finger at his father. Mommy works 2 jobs. She scrubs floors. You live in a castle. Order. The bailiff shouted. Gregory rolled his eyes, turning to Vanessa. See, no discipline. Feral. Judge Harrison didn't bang her gavel. She just watched. A strange, small smile played on her lips, gone as quickly as it appeared. Let the boy speak, Judge Harrison said softly. The room went deadly silent. Gregory's lead lawyer, a man named Mr. Thorne, stood up. Objection, Your Honor. The child is a minor and... Overruled. Sit down, Mr. Thorne, the judge snapped. She looked at Tyler. Young man, what makes you say your father lives in a castle? I saw it on TV, Tyler said, his voice trembling now. They showed his house. It has a pool. And Mommy cries at night because she can't buy milk. Hanna put her head in her hands, shame burning her cheeks. Judge Harrison nodded slowly. She opened a thick file folder in front of her. Mr. Sterling, you claim you are cash poor because the assets are tied up in the Sterling family trust. Is that your argument? Yes, Your Honor, Gregory said confidently. The trust controls the maritime company. I merely draw a salary as CEO. And you wish to sever ties with these children to protect the company's image. I believe your affidavit says they are a liability. It's a delicate business environment, Gregory shrugged. I am remarrying Vanessa here. We are building a new brand. The past needs to stay in the past. I see, Judge Harrison said. She closed the file. Well, it is interesting you mention the Sterling Family Trust. Because this morning I received a sealed document from the executor of your late father's estate. It seems there was a clause that only activates when the appointed guardian attempts to abandon the bloodline. Gregory frowned. What? My father's will was probated 10 years ago. I am the sole beneficiary. You were the trustee, Mr. Sterling. Not the beneficiary, Judge Harrison corrected him. Her eyes gleamed. Bailiff, please lock the doors. No one leaves. Vanessa looked around, suddenly nervous. Gregory, what is she talking about? Quiet, Gregory hissed. She's bluffing, I assure you, Mr. Sterling, I do not bluff, Judge Harrison said. She picked up a piece of paper, aged and yellowed. This is the grandfather clause. It states that in the event Gregory Sterling attempts to divorce his wife without cause or abandon his biological children, the true ownership of Sterling Maritime and all associated assets, including the mansion, the accounts, and the limousines, immediately transfers. Hanna looked up, confused. Transfers? To whom? Transfers to whom? Gregory laughed, though the sound was nervous. There is no one else. I am the only son. Judge Harrison looked directly at the two little boys in worn-out jackets. The assets transfer to the eldest male heirs of the Sterling bloodline. Effective immediately, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Gregory's face went pale. That's impossible. Those papers are forged. They were filed with the state Supreme Court 20 years ago to be opened only upon this specific legal motion, Judge Harrison said calmly. You just triggered the clause yourself, Mr. Sterling, by filing for the severance of parental rights. You legally declared your intent to abandon the bloodline. No, Vanessa shrieked, standing up. That means he has nothing. We have nothing. Sit down, Ms. Vanessa, the judge ordered. I am not finished. Mr. Sterling, the judge continued. Since your sons, Tobias and Tyler Sterling, are minors, their assets must be managed by a legal guardian until they turn 21. Since you have just petitioned to remove yourself as their parent, the court accepts your resignation. The judge picked up her stamp and slammed it down on Gregory's motion. Bang! Motion granted. You are no longer their legal guardians. Gregory stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Wait. I withdraw. I withdraw the motion. Too late, the judge said. The record is sealed. You are a stranger to them now, legally speaking. Then who controls the money? Vanessa shouted, her composure cracking completely. Her face was turning a blotchy red. Who controls the billions? Judge Harrison turned her gaze to the defendant's table. To the woman in the wet coat with holes in her boots. The guardianship of the heir's estate falls to the custodial parent. Ms. Hanna Sterling. Hanna felt the room spin. She gripped the edge of the table. Me, she whispered. You, the judge said warmly. You are now the sole trustee of the Sterling Maritime fortune, roughly valued at $2 billion, on behalf of your sons. You have full control of the residence, the accounts, and the business operations until the boys come of age. $2 billion, Vanessa whispered. She looked at Gregory, horror dawning in her eyes. She looked at the man she was about to marry, who was now, effectively, a penniless ex-husband. You idiot, Vanessa screamed, turning on Gregory. She began to hit him with her expensive handbag. You told me you owned it all. You told me she was nobody. Vanessa, stop, Gregory tried to shield his face. We can fix this. We can appeal. Appeal? Judge Harrison asked, raising an eyebrow. This is a binding trust execution, Mr. Sterling. There is no appeal. However, there is the matter of your current residence. Ms. Hanna. Hanna stood up slowly. Her legs felt shaky, but looking at her boys, seeing Tyler's wide eyes and Toby's small smile, she felt a surge of strength she hadn't felt in years. She looked at the man who had left her pregnant and alone. She looked at the woman who had mocked her poverty minutes ago. "Yes, Your Honor," Hanna asked. "As the new owner of the Sterling estate, you have the right to decide who resides there. Currently, Mr. Sterling and Ms. Vanessa are occupying the master suite. What are your instructions?" Hanna took a deep breath. She thought about the leaking roof in her studio apartment. She thought about the nights she went hungry so the boys could eat. "I want them out," Hanna said clearly. "Today." "You can't do that," Gregory roared, his face purple with rage. "I bought that house, Actually, your father bought it," Judge Harrison interjected. "And now it belongs to Toby and Tyler." "I want them out by noon," Hanna added, her voice gaining power. "And I want the keys to the car they came in. My sons shouldn't have to take the bus home in the rain." Vanessa let out a guttural scream of frustration. "I am not walking, I am wearing Louboutins." "Then I suggest you start walking carefully," Hanna said, locking eyes with her rival. "The pavement is wet." "Bailiff," Judge Harrison said, "please escort Mr. Sterling and his associate to the exit. And retrieve the keys to the limousine for Mrs. Sterling." As the bailiff moved toward them, Gregory looked at Hanna, desperation flooding his eyes. The arrogance was gone. "Hanna, honey, please. We can talk about this. For the boys. I'm their father." Hanna looked down at Toby and Tyler. "You made your choice, Gregory. You wanted to sever ties. You got exactly what you asked for." She turned her back on him. The ride from the courthouse to the Sterling estate was surreal. For the last 6 years, Hanna had traveled exclusively by public bus or on foot. Now she sat sunk deep into the cream leather seats of a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Collins, the driver, had not said a word since the bailiff handed him the keys and Hanna had timidly approached the car. He had simply opened the door, his face impassive. But as they pulled onto the highway, he met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "It is good to have you back, Mrs. Sterling," Collins said, his voice gravelly but warm. "And to finally meet the young masters." Hanna felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Collins. And please, just call me Hanna. I'm not sure I'm ready to be Mrs. Sterling again." "With respect, ma'am, you are the only Mrs. Sterling that house has ever recognized. The staff, we missed you. The house has been cold without you." Toby and Tyler were wide-eyed, pressing their faces and hands against the tinted windows. They had discovered the buttons that controlled the privacy shades and were making them go up and down, giggling. "Mommy, is this the Batmobile?" Tyler asked, his mouth full of a granola bar he'd found in the console. "Something like that," Hanna smiled, though her stomach was in knots. "We're going to the house now. Remember, the bad man might still be there packing. You stay close to me. The car turned off the main road and approached the massive wrought iron gates of the Sterling estate. The last time Hanna had seen these gates, they were closing behind her as she walked away with a suitcase and a broken heart. Today they swung open slowly, welcoming her home. The driveway was a quarter-mile long, lined with ancient oak trees. At the end stood the mansion, a sprawling stone structure that looked more like a European chateau than a house in Washington state. But the scene in the driveway was chaotic. 2 moving trucks were already there. Gregory had clearly been confident he would win today, perhaps planning to move things around for his wedding. But now the trucks were idle. Collins parked the car right at the front steps. "I will accompany you in, ma'am." Hanna took a deep breath, grabbed the boy's hands, and walked up the steps. The front door was open. From inside, she could hear screaming. "Careful with that. That's alligator skin." Vanessa's voice shrilled through the foyer. Hanna stepped into the grand entrance hall. It was a mess. Suitcases were flung open on the marble floor. Clothes were piled on the antique chairs. Vanessa was running back and forth like a headless chicken, grabbing vases, paintings, and silverware, shoving them into bags. Gregory was standing by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring blankly at a large oil painting of his father. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "What do you think you're doing?" Hanna asked, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. Vanessa spun around, clutching a silver candelabra. Her mascara was running and her hair was wild. "I am taking what is mine. I spent 3 years of my life in this house. I earned this." "Put it down," Hanna said calmly. The judge said personal effects. Clothes and toiletries. That candelabra is a Sterling family heirloom. It belongs to the trust. It belongs to my sons. I don't care what that old hag judge said. Vanessa screamed, throwing a silk scarf into a Louis Vuitton duffel bag. "Gregory, do something. Tell her to get out." Gregory turned slowly. He looked at Hanna, then at the twins who were hiding behind her legs, peeking out at the crazy lady. "It's over, Vanessa," Gregory said, his voice hollow. "The accounts are frozen. I tried to transfer the offshore funds 5 minutes ago. Access denied. We have nothing. You have nothing." Vanessa spat. "I am not leaving empty-handed." She lunged for a small table by the door, grabbing a Fabergé egg that sat on a velvet pillow. "No." Hanna stepped forward, but Collins was faster. The driver stepped in front of Vanessa, his large frame blocking her path. He gently but firmly took the egg from her hand. "I believe this stays, Miss Vanessa," Collins said. "Get your hands off me, you servant," she shrieked. Actually, a new voice boomed from the doorway. "He's doing you a favor. If you walk out with that, it's grand larceny. And I'd have to arrest you." Sheriff Miller stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 deputies. He was a large man who had known the Sterling family for decades. He tipped his hat to Hanna. "Afternoon, Hanna." The judge called ahead. "Said there might be a disturbance." Hanna nodded. "Thank you, Sheriff. I just want them to leave peacefully." Sheriff Miller turned to Gregory. "Mr. Sterling, you have 10 minutes to collect your clothing and vacate the premises. The car you arrived in has been seized. You'll need to call a cab." The humiliation on Gregory's face was total. He set his whiskey glass down on the mantel. "Hanna," he said, walking towards her. "Can we just talk? Privately, without the police?" "There is nothing to say," Hanna said, standing her ground. "I can help you," Gregory pleaded, his eyes darting around desperately. "You don't know how to run the company. The board will eat you alive. You need me. I can stay on as a consultant. We can live here together for the boys. Separate rooms." Hanna looked at him with genuine pity. "You still don't get it. You think I'm weak. You think because I've been poor, I'm stupid. But poverty teaches you things, Gregory. It teaches you how to budget. It teaches you how to survive. And it teaches you to spot a con artist a mile away." She pointed to the door. "Get out." Gregory's face hardened. The mask of civility slipped. "You'll regret this. You'll run this family into the ground within a month. And I'll be there to buy the scraps." "Move it, Gregory," the sheriff barked. Vanessa was sobbing now, dragging 2 heavy suitcases filled with her designer clothes. She stumbled down the front steps, her heel catching on the stone, sending her sprawling onto the driveway. The twins watched through the open door. Tyler looked up at Hanna. "Mommy, the bad lady fell down." "She tripped on her own greed, baby," Hanna whispered. Gregory walked out past them, not even looking at his sons. He walked down the steps to where Vanessa was gathering her things, and the 2 of them stood on the driveway, surrounded by their luggage, as the massive oak doors of the Sterling estate closed with a definitive, heavy thud. Hanna leaned her back against the door and exhaled, her legs finally giving way. As she slid down to the floor. "Mommy." Toby touched her cheek. "Are you sad?" Hanna pulled both boys into her lap, burying her face in their necks, smelling their hair. She laughed, a sound that was half sob. "No, sweetie. I'm not sad. For the first time in a long time, I'm not scared." Just then, the back of the hallway filled with people. The housekeeping staff, the cook, and the groundskeepers had gathered. An older woman, Mrs. Higgins, the head housekeeper who had been there when Hanna was a young bride, stepped forward. She was wiping her eyes with an apron. "Welcome home, Mrs. Sterling," Mrs. Higgins beamed. "Shall I prepare the boys a proper lunch? I imagine they're tired of snacks." Hanna looked up at the staff, faces she recognized, faces that looked relieved to see her instead of Vanessa. "Yes, Mrs. Higgins," Hanna smiled, wiping her tears. "That would be wonderful. And please, open all the curtains. I want some light in here." 3 days later, the reality of the situation began to set in. The mansion was wonderful. The boys had their own rooms, the fridge was full, and the heat worked. But Hanna knew the hard part was just beginning. Winning the house was one thing. Running a multi-billion-dollar maritime logistics company was another. Monday morning arrived with a grey, steel sky. Hanna stood in front of the full-length mirror in the master bedroom. She had cleared out all of Gregory's suits and Vanessa's lingering perfumes. The closet was now filled with the modest clothes she had brought from the apartment, looking tiny and sad in the vast space. She needed a suit. A power suit. She found one in the back of the cedar closet, a navy blue blazer and skirt she had left behind 6 years ago. It was a little loose now. Stress and hunger had taken their toll. She pinned it at the waist, put on a clean white blouse, and brushed her hair back into a tight, no-nonsense ponytail. "You can do this," she told her reflection. "You survived the eviction notice last winter. You can survive a board meeting." Collins drove her to the Sterling Maritime headquarters in downtown Seattle. The skyscraper pierced the clouds, a monument to the family's power. As she walked into the lobby, the atmosphere changed. Whispers trailed her. Heads turned. Everyone knew. The memo had gone out on Friday. Management change effective immediately. She took the private elevator to the 40th floor. When the doors opened, a young woman with terrified eyes jumped up from the receptionist desk. "Mrs. Sterling, we weren't expecting you until 10. "I like to be early," Hanna said gently. "Is the boardroom ready?" "Yes, ma'am. They are all in there waiting." Hanna walked down the long corridor lined with models of cargo ships. She could hear the voices before she opened the double glass doors. "A disaster. Absolute disaster," a deep voice was saying. "She's a housewife. She hasn't worked a day in her life." The stock dropped 4% this morning just on the rumor. "We need to declare her incompetent," another voice suggested. "If we can prove she's unfit to manage the trust, we can install an interim CEO. I'll nominate myself." Hanna pushed the doors open. The conversation died instantly. 12 men in expensive suits sat around a mahogany table. At the head of the table sat an empty chair, Gregory's chair. Standing near the window was Marcus Henderson, the CFO. He was a shark of a man, known for his ruthlessness. He was the one who had just suggested declaring her incompetent. "Good morning, gentlemen," Hanna said, her voice steady, though her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She walked to the head of the table. She didn't sit. She placed her hands on the leather chair and looked at them. "Mrs. Sterling," Henderson said, stepping forward with a fake, condescending smile. This is a surprise. We were just discussing transition protocols. Perhaps it would be best if you went home, spent time with your children, and let us handle the heavy. Perhaps it would be best if you went home, spent time with your children, and let us handle the heavy lifting. This is a complex business. I am aware of how complex it is, Mr. Henderson, Hanna said. I am also aware that under Gregory's leadership and your financial guidance, profits have stagnated for 3 quarters, while executive bonuses have increased by 20%. Henderson's smile faltered. That is market fluctuation. Is it? Hanna reached into her bag and pulled out a thick binder. It wasn't a company report. It was her own research. She slammed it onto the table. For the last 3 nights, I haven't slept. I've been reading the ledgers. The real ledgers that were kept in the safe at the house. Gregory was sloppy. The room went very quiet. I found payments to a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Blue Horizon Consulting, Hanna continued, looking directly at Henderson. $2 million a month for consulting fees. But Blue Horizon has no employees, no website, and its registered address is a P.O. box. Henderson tugged at his collar. That was a strategic partnership initiated by Gregory. And signed off by you, Hanna countered. It looks like embezzlement to me. Or at best, gross negligence. She looked around the table. I may have been out of the picture for 6 years, gentlemen. But before I was just a housewife, I was the one who proofread Gregory's contracts because he was too lazy to do it himself. I have a degree in economics that I never got to use because he wanted me in the kitchen. Well, I'm out of the kitchen now. She finally sat down in the big leather chair. It felt huge, but she filled it with her presence. Here is the new reality, Hanna announced. The Blue Horizon payments stop today. We are ordering a full forensic audit of the last 5 years. Any board member found to be complicit in siphoning funds from my children's inheritance will be fired and prosecuted. One of the older board members, a man named Mr. Abernathy, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. He had served under Gregory's father. And if we refuse to work with you, Henderson threatened, if we all walk out, then I accept your resignations, Hanna said instantly. There are plenty of hungry, honest executives in this city who would kill for your seats. But if you stay, you work for me. And you work for the future of this company, not your own pockets. Henderson looked around for support, but the other men were looking at Hanna with a mix of fear and newfound respect. She had the documents. She had the power. Mr. Abernathy smiled slowly. She sounds like her father-in-law. The old man would have liked this. Abernathy turned to Henderson. Sit down, Marcus. The lady has the floor. Situation was much bleaker for the former king of Seattle. Gregory sat on the edge of a bed in a Motel 6 near the airport. The room smelled of stale smoke and lemon cleaner. His suit was wrinkled. He stared at his phone. He had called Vanessa 15 times. No answer. Finally, a text message popped up. "Don't call me again. I'm flying to Miami with Jason. He actually has money. Don't come looking for me. You're a loser, Gregory." Gregory threw the phone against the wall, cracking the screen. He put his head in his hands. He had lost his wife, his children, his house, his company, and now his mistress. His stomach rumbled. He reached for his wallet to buy a sandwich from the vending machine, but then he remembered he only had $20 cash left. A knock came at the motel door. Gregory's heart leaped. Vanessa. Did she come back? He rushed to the door and threw it open. It wasn't Vanessa. It was a process server, a short, balding man with a clipboard. Gregory Sterling. Yes. You've been served. The man shoved a stack of papers into Gregory's chest. What is this? Gregory stammered. Lawsuit from the board of directors of Sterling Maritime, the man said, walking away. They're suing you for embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, and fraud. Oh, and the district attorney is looking into it too. Have a nice day. Gregory slid down the doorframe, sitting on the dirty carpet of the motel hallway. He looked at the legal papers. The name at the top of the plaintiff list wasn't the board. It was Hanna Sterling, acting CEO. She wasn't just kicking him out. She was coming for everything he had stolen. And for the first time in his life, Gregory Sterling was truly afraid. 6 months had passed since Hanna Sterling walked out of the courtroom with a billion-dollar empire on her shoulders. The seasons had changed. The gray Seattle rain had given way to a tentative, blooming spring. But inside the Sterling Maritime Tower, the climate was stormy. Hanna sat in the CEO's office, a room she had completely redesigned. Gone were the intimidating dark leathers and hunting trophies Gregory had favored. The space was now bright, filled with plants, and on the massive oak desk, right next to the quarterly reports, sat 2 framed finger paintings signed by Toby and Tyler. She rubbed her temples, staring at the red line on the graph projected on the wall. "Explain this to me again, Marcus," Hanna said, her voice dangerously low. Marcus Henderson, the CFO who had survived her initial purge only because he knew where the financial bodies were buried, stood by the window. He looked smug. "It's a labor strike, Mrs. Sterling. The dockworkers at Terminal 5. They've halted all cargo. 3 of our biggest ships are sitting in the bay, burning fuel and money. The clients are furious. If we miss the Amazon delivery deadline tomorrow, we trigger a penalty clause. It could cost us $50 million. Why are they striking?" Hanna asked. "We just approved a wage increase." "They claim safety violations," Henderson shrugged. "Rumors are spreading that we are cutting corners on crane maintenance. Completely unfounded, of course. But these blue-collar types, they get emotional. Hanna narrowed her eyes. Something didn't smell right. She had personally inspected the safety logs last month. Get the union rep on the phone. I've tried, Henderson lied smoothly. He refuses to talk. He says the trust is broken. Frankly, Hanna, the board thinks you should step back. This is a crisis requiring a firmer hand. Gregory knew how to handle these men. Gregory's idea of handling them was threatening to fire everyone, Hanna snapped. She stood up, grabbing her coat. I'm going down there. Henderson's eyes widened. To the docks. You can't. It's a riot zone. It's unsafe. They are my employees, Marcus. Not my enemies. The drive to the port was tense. When Hanna arrived, the scene was chaotic. Hundreds of men and women in high-visibility vests were chanting, holding signs that read Sterling equals greed and mother of billions, mother of lies. Collins stopped the car. Ma'am, I really don't think you should go out there. Stay here, Collins. Keep the engine running. Hanna stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. The chanting faltered slightly as the petite woman in a cream business suit walked directly toward the picket line. She didn't have security guards. She didn't have a megaphone. A large man with a beard, clearly the leader, stepped forward. This was Jack O'Malley, the union head. You've got some nerve showing your face, Mrs. Sterling, O'Malley grunted. Come to watch us starve. I came to ask why you think I'm cutting safety checks, Hanna said, her voice projecting clearly. I signed the order for new hydraulics myself 3 weeks ago. We never saw O'Malley spat. And we got a memo yesterday, signed by you, saying our healthcare benefits were being slashed by 30% to pay for executive restructuring. Hanna froze. I never signed that memo. O'Malley pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and shoved it at her. That's your signature, isn't it? Hanna looked at the document. It was on official letterhead. It had her signature at the bottom. O'Malley, do you have a pen? He frowned but handed her a Sharpie. Hanna took the memo, crossed out the text with a giant X and wrote, void. Fraud. Full benefits restored plus 10% hazard pay. Hanna Sterling. She held it up. I didn't sign this. Someone forged my signature to start this strike. Someone who wants me to fail. The crowd murmured. O'Malley looked at her, studying her face. He saw the anger in her eyes, not at them, but for them. As if you're lying. O'Malley warned. If I'm lying, you can sink my ships, Hanna said. But right now, I need to find out who is trying to destroy this company from the inside. Will you help me? O'Malley looked back at his men. He nodded slowly. We go back to work. But I'm coming with you to the office. An hour later, Hanna stormed back into the executive suite, but this time she had Jack O'Malley and two burly dockworkers flanking her. She kicked the door to the conference room open. Henderson was on the phone, laughing. "Yes, she's at the docks now. Probably getting eaten alive. The stock is plummeting. I'll have the interim CEO motion ready by hold on." Henderson turned and saw Hanna. He saw O'Malley. The color drained from his face. "Who were you talking to, Marcus?" Hanna asked, walking over to him. "No one. Just a client." Hanna grabbed the phone from his hand. As she looked at the screen, the call was still active. The ID read G. Sterling. She put the phone to her ear. "Marcus, did they scare her off?" Gregory's voice came through, sounding drunk and desperate. "I need that stock price to hit rock bottom so I can buy back in." Hanna didn't say a word. She just pressed the speaker button. "Marcus," Gregory asked again. "Are you there? Look, once I'm back in charge, I'll double your kickback. Just make sure she looks incompetent." The entire room heard it. O'Malley cracked his knuckles. "Hello, Gregory," Hanna said into the phone. There was a long silence on the other end. Then a click. Hanna looked at Henderson. The shark was trembling. "You forged my signature," she said. "You incited a labor strike. You conspired with a former executive to devalue the company. That's corporate sabotage, fraud, and about 10 other felonies." "Hanna, wait, I can explain," Henderson stammered, backing away. "Gregory forced me. He has blackmail material on me." "I don't care," Hanna said. She turned to Collins, who was standing by the door. "Call Sheriff Miller and tell him to bring handcuffs. 2 pairs." The final showdown didn't happen in a boardroom or a back alley. It happened where it all began, courtroom 4B. 3 weeks after the failed strike, the police had arrested Gregory Sterling in a cheap bar in Tacoma. He was disheveled, unshaven, and unrecognizable from the tycoon he had once been. He was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Hanna sat in the front row, wearing a sharp white suit, the color of new beginnings. Toby and Tyler were at school safe. This part of the ugly business was not for them. Gregory was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked at Hanna, and for a moment his eyes flashed with the old arrogance, but it was quickly extinguished by the reality of the chains on his wrists. Vanessa was there too, subpoenaed as a witness. She looked tired. Her Miami millionaire had dumped her after 2 weeks when he realized she had no access to the Sterling fortune. She sat as far away from Gregory as possible. Judge Harrison was presiding again. She looked over her spectacles at Gregory. "Mr. Sterling, we meet again." "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding," Gregory rasped. "I built that company. I was just trying to save it from her. By hiring a CFO to forge documents and paying off dockworkers to riot? Judge Harrison asked, flipping through a thick file. The evidence provided by Mrs. Sterling and the forensic audit is overwhelming. You siphoned $4 million into offshore accounts. You deliberately tried to tank the stock price of a trust that belongs to your own children. Gregory slumped. I needed the money. I had debts. And now you have a sentence, the judge said. Hanna was called to the stand to give a victim impact statement. She walked up, her head held high. Mrs. Sterling, the prosecutor asked, how have the defendant's actions affected the trust? The money can be recovered, Hanna said, looking directly at Gregory. The business is recovering. We just had our best quarter in 5 years because we actually treat our employees like human beings. She paused. But the real damage is to his sons. They ask about him. They ask why their father hates them. And I have to tell them that he doesn't hate them, he just loves himself more. That is a sentence he will have to serve for the rest of his life, regardless of what this court decides. Gregory looked down at his hands. A single tear tracked through the grime on his cheek. It wasn't clear if it was regret or just self-pity. Judge Harrison banged her gavel. Gregory Sterling, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. Furthermore, a permanent restraining order is issued. You are to have no contact with Hanna, Tobias, or Tyler Sterling. As the bailiff hauled him away, Gregory turned back one last time. Hanna, please. Who will teach them to be men? Hanna stood up. I will, she said softly. And I'll do a much better job than you ever could. The cold, formal gardens were now a chaotic mix of vegetable patches, a massive jungle gym, and a dog run where 2 golden retrievers were chasing a frisbee. Hanna sat on the porch, sipping iced tea. She watched as 8-year-old Toby and Tyler ran around with Jack O'Malley, who had become a surrogate uncle to them. They were building a treehouse. Higher, Uncle Jack, higher. Tyler screamed with delight. Hanna smiled. She looked at the tablet on her lap. The news headline read, Sterling Maritime voted one employer in Washington state for 2nd year in a row. She wasn't just the poor wife anymore. She wasn't just the victim. She was a titan of industry, but she led with a heart, not a whip. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from the judge, Martha Harrison, who had become a mentor and friend. Martha just saw the quarterly figures. You're making us all look bad, Hanna. Lunch on Friday. Hanna, you're on. But you're buying. She put the phone down and walked out onto the grass. The boys ran to her, tackling her in a hug. Mom, look, we made a pirate ship. Toby yelled. It's magnificent, Hanna said, kissing their dirty foreheads. She looked back at the house, the castle she had won, the fortress she had defended. It wasn't a symbol of greed anymore. It was a home. She thought about Gregory sitting in a cell, alone with his memories of money. She thought about Vanessa chasing the next wallet. And then she looked at her sons, safe, loved, and happy. Hanna Sterling had walked into hell with nothing but a rain-soaked coat and the truth. She had walked out with everything that mattered. "Who wants pizza?" she asked. Me, the boys shouted. As they walked back inside, the sun dipped below the horizon, ending the long, dark chapter of the past and promising a bright, beautiful tomorrow. And there you have it. Gregory thought his money made him untouchable, and Vanessa thought her beauty gave her power. But in the end, they both forgot the most important law of the universe: karma never loses an address. Hanna didn't just win a lawsuit, she won her life back, proving that a mother's love is the strongest force on earth, stronger than any billionaire, any lawyer, and any lie. What did you think of Hanna's revenge? Did Gregory get what he deserved, or was 15 years too short? And what would you have done if you were in Hanna's shoes when Vanessa tried to steal the valuables? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the next dramatic story. We have a crazy tale coming up tomorrow about a cheating husband who realized his mistake too late. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.